Imagine you are just completely drowning in a Category 5 hurricane of stress.
Oh, yeah, we have all been there.
Right. Your cortisol is just spiking out of control. Your inbox is a total disaster. Maybe your personal life feels entirely upside down.
And your brain is just basically screaming that the ship is going down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, I want you to imagine that the absolute best, most scientifically backed life raft you can deploy in that exact second isn't, quitting your job.
Or packing up and moving to the woods.
Right, or undergoing some massive, monumental life overhaul. It's actually a cup of tea.
Which sounds completely ridiculous at first.
It really does. But welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are looking at something that, honestly, it completely upends our fundamental understanding of how human beings survive the absolute hardest parts of life.
Yeah, because we are so conditioned to believe that massive, overwhelming problems, well, they require massive, overwhelming solutions.
Which makes sense on paper.
It does, but the source material we are examining today, it dismantles that assumption piece by piece. It argues that the key to navigating those really crushing periods of life is actually microscopic in scale.
So our mission today is to unpack a very specific, and I mean incredibly potent, excerpt from an audio series called The Inner Horizon.
Right, specifically episode 8.
Yeah, episode 8, which is titled Joy Celebrating Life in Small Moments. And in this audio, the host sits down with a positive psychology researcher to discuss the actual literal functional mechanics of joy.
And we aren't talking about joy as some, cheesy greeting card concept.
No, definitely not. Not joy as a fleeting accident either. We are talking about joy as a deliberate, highly effective, and deeply practical tool for building resilience.
I think the primary objective here is to completely tear down this widespread misconception that joy is just a passive emotion.
Like it just happens to you.
Exactly. The researcher in this episode presents this really radical proposition, which is that joy is an operational mechanism. It's this vital component for human flourishing that you have to actively deploy.
Especially when the conditions around you are actively hostile to it.
Right, when you least want to feel it.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the host of The Inner Horizon, they jump right into this beautiful but very, very precise piece of imagery to set the foundation.
The weather metaphor.
Yeah, the weather metaphor.
Right.
They say, and I'm quoting this directly here, think of joy as sunlight breaking through the clouds. The clouds may still be there, but the light reminds us of warmth, hope, and possibility.
And that choice of a weather metaphor is it's highly intentional.
How so?
Well, by establishing the imagery of clouds and sunlight, the text is acknowledging a prevailing, often really negative baseline condition. The clouds represent the reality for you if you are dealing with, say, grief or financial panic or just the brutal friction of daily existence.
It's just the grind of it all.
Yeah, the grind. And notice how the text explicitly notes the clouds may still be there.
Right.
It does not claim the sunlight just magically burns the clouds away in an instant.
Yeah.
It doesn't suggest the storm never existed.
The joy, which is the sunlight here, it sort of pierces through, offering a contrasting experience.
Exactly, a parallel experience of warmth that is literally existing simultaneously with the storm.
Okay, but my immediate reaction to reading that, and I imagine a lot of you listening right now might feel the same way if you are in the middle of a really dark time, is, well, a sense of resistance.
Sure, it feels a little dismissive.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you are entirely surrounded by a massive destructive storm, looking for a little ray of sunlight feels a lot like ignoring the reality of the water rising around your ankles.
You feel like you're being told to just look on the bright side.
Right. It borders on toxic positivity, that whole good vibes only mentality, while everything around you is actively falling apart.
I get that. But toxic positivity demands delusion. Yeah, it requires you to deny the existence of the clouds entirely. You have to pretend the storm isn't happening. But the source text actually anticipates that exact resistance.
It does.
It resolves it by stating, just outright, joy isn't about ignoring challenges.
Which is a huge distinction.
It's massive. Because if we look at the psychological mechanics of what the text is actually asking for, it's a duality of mind.
A duality of mind, meaning you hold two things at once.
Exactly. It requires this intense, really grounded presence.
Right.
You fully acknowledge the clouds. You know the challenges are real. You know they carry immense weight, and they are threatening.
But you don't stop there.
Right. But you are actively choosing to broaden your attentional spotlight to include the sunlight that exists in the exact same physical moment.
So it requires holding two seemingly opposing truths in your head at the exact same time.
Yeah, which is hard.
Really hard. The truth that the world is currently hostile and difficult, and simultaneously, the truth that there is a momentary experience of warmth occurring right in front of me.
And recognizing the sunlight doesn't invalidate the storm.
Right. It doesn't mean the storm is fake.
No, it simply prevents the storm from becoming the absolute totality of your reality. Because if the storm becomes your entire reality, your nervous system just remains in this perpetual, exhausting state of threat detection.
Which just burns you out.
Completely. By acknowledging the sunlight, you introduce conflicting data to a stressed brain. You literally force the brain to recognize that the threat is not absolute.
There is still warmth.
There is still warmth. There is still possibility.
You know, if acknowledging the storm doesn't make you delusional, it kind of forces us to completely redefine what the emotion of joy actually is in the first place.
You definitely need a new definition.
Yeah, because we treat joy like it's just the absence of pain, right? Or the byproduct of everything going perfectly right in your life.
It almost never happens.
Exactly. But if joy can exist simultaneously with deep stress, then our fundamental understanding of it needs a major software update.
And the host of The Inner Horizon actually pushes the guest researcher for this exact definition.
Yeah, and the response is basically the engine of this entire philosophy.
It really is. The researcher states, and this is key, joy is both an emotion and a practice.
An emotion and a practice.
Right. And the interaction between the biological and the cognitive here is what makes this a functional tool.
Yeah.
Rather than just, a nice idea you read on a bumper sticker.
So the emotion side of that equation, that's the biological reality, right? The neurochemical cascade.
Yep, the physical stuff.
Like when something good happens, your brain releases dopamine and serotonin. You get that literal physiological warmth in your chest.
You feel it in your body.
Right. And you don't consciously tell your brain to release those chemicals. It's just an automatic biological event.
The biological event is completely involuntary, yes.
Yeah.
But the researcher adds that joy is also a practice.
And how do they define the practice part?
They define it as the conscious ability to notice and savor positive experiences.
The ability to notice and savor.
Exactly. This is where human agency actually enters the picture. You have the involuntary neurochemical cascade, right? And then you have the voluntary cognitive action of focusing your attention on it.
So you can't always dictate when the biological event happens.
No, you can't.
Mm.
But you have absolute control over the cognitive action of noticing it when it does happen.
It's so interesting because the way we normally think about joy is just entirely passive.
Oh, completely.
We treat it like the weather. You step outside, it happens to be sunny, and you just passively receive it. You're like, oh, nice day.
Right. You didn't do anything to make it sunny.
Exactly. But if joy is a practice, it operates way more like a muscle.
I like that analogy.
Yeah, think about it. The emotion, that automatic rush of serotonin, is the muscle tissue itself. But the practice, the conscious noticing and savoring, that's the act of putting that tissue under tension in the gym.
You have to work it out.
Right. If you don't actively flex your attention toward those positive stimuli, the neural pathways associated with noticing joy will physically atrophy. They just weaken.
That's spot on. If we look at the principle of neuroplasticity, the brain wires itself based on what it repeatedly does.
What fires together wires together.
Exactly. So if you only practice scanning your environment for threats, which, by the way, stress absolutely forces you to do.
Oh, yeah. When you're stressed, all you see are problems.
Right. If that's all you do, your brain becomes incredibly, remarkably efficient at finding the clouds. It becomes an expert at spotting misery.
Which is why the source text has this relentless focus on the scale of the joy practice.
The scale is so important.
It really instructs you to notice positive experiences, and they say, no matter how small.
No matter how small.
And that emphasis on smallness is a direct countermeasure to how we usually operate, isn't it?
It is, because we usually operate on this massive macro scale.
We tie all our joy to massive, life-altering milestones.
Getting married, buying a house.
Landing a huge promotion, or taking this epic 2-week vacation to Europe.
But if we actually do the math on a standard human lifespan, those grand events make up a microscopic fraction of our actual lived time.
Like maybe 1% of your life, if you're lucky.
Barely even that. So if you require a macro event to trigger your joy, you are going to be literally starving for it 99% of your life.
You're just holding your breath for years at a time.
Exactly. Relying on those grand external events makes joy incredibly scarce and really fragile. Your emotional regulation becomes entirely dependent on variables you cannot control at all.
You can't control if you get the promotion.
Right. But by radically downscaling the threshold for what qualifies as a joy trigger, like bringing it down to the smallest possible denominator, the resource suddenly becomes infinitely renewable.
You basically bypass the evolutionary mismatch.
Yeah, the mismatch where our brains are wired to ignore the mundane good stuff and just fixate entirely on the catastrophic bad stuff.
So you stop waiting for the universe to just hand you a winning lottery ticket.
And you start actively harvesting the pennies that are scattered all over the sidewalk.
That's a great way to put it. But you know, theory is clean and application is really messy.
Oh, always.
Recognizing that joy is a cognitive practice of noticing the microscopic good things, it immediately forces a really hard question.
Which is?
What does this actually look like in the nervous system of someone who is currently suffocating under the weight of real, terrifying problems?
How do you actually do it when things are terrible?
Right. And the source material addresses this head-on by shifting from abstract philosophy to a very concrete clinical anecdote.
The case study with the researcher?
Yes, the researcher presents a case study of a client who was entirely overwhelmed by stress.
And the text doesn't actually enumerate the specific nature of the stress, right?
Oh, it leaves it open. It could be a health crisis, it could be financial ruin, or just severe burnout.
Yeah.
But the state of feeling utterly overwhelmed is the operative condition here.
And the intervention the researcher deploys sounds, well, on its face, it almost sounds insulting to someone in a real crisis.
It kind of does.
The text states, the client practiced micro moments of joy. And the two specific examples provided are pausing to enjoy a cup of tea and noticing birdsong.
Yeah, and if you are listening to this on your commute right now, your brain is probably doing exactly what the client's brain did.
Looping over a massive problem.
Right. You're dreading the disaster waiting for you at the office. And if someone leans over and tells you to go drink some tea and listen to the birds, you would probably want to just scream at them.
Or throw the tea at them.
Honestly, yes. But the text argues that these specific actions are doing some incredibly heavy lifting neurologically.
They really are.
Yeah.
Let's look at the cup of tea first. Because it's not actually about the beverage itself.
It's not about the Earl Grey.
No, it's about the physics and the biology of the act. A cup of hot tea acts as a multisensory anchor to the physical present.
A multisensory anchor. Break that down for us.
Sure. When you are ruminating on a massive problem, your consciousness is entirely displaced. It's either thrown into the future, anticipating some disaster, or it's stuck in the past, regretting mistakes.
You are anywhere but right here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when you grip a hot mug, the physical sensation of that thermal transfer to your hands demands sensory processing in the present moment.
Your brain have to acknowledge, oh, my hands are warm right now.
Yes. And the aroma engages the olfactory bulb. And the olfactory bulb has a direct neural projection to the amygdala and the hippocampus.
Meaning it bypasses the conscious routing of your other senses.
Right. You are forcing the brain to process immediate, non-threatening sensory data. You're telling your nervous system, hey, right here, right now, we are safe and we are warm.
Plus, there's the actual thermodynamics of the tea itself.
Right, the waiting part.
Yeah, you have to boil the water, you steep the leaves, and fundamentally, you just have to wait for the liquid to cool down before you can safely ingest it.
You can't speed that up.
You cannot accelerate the cooling process through sheer willpower or panic. You just have to sit there.
It enforces a hard pause. It is a mandated interruption of your stress cycle. Your internal timeline is physically forced to synchronize with the physical reality of the cooling water.
That's so powerful.
It is. And the second micro moment the text highlights, noticing birdsong, it functions on a similar but somewhat distinct neurological pathway.
Let's talk about the birdsong. Because when a person is overwhelmed, their attention is localized entirely internally.
Right. They're trapped inside their own head.
The brain's default mode network, the DMN, is just hyperactive. It's generating this endless, deafening loop of internal monologue regarding whatever the stressor is.
And you are basically trapped in the echo chamber of your own anxiety.
Just bouncing off the walls of your own skull.
Exactly. But auditory processing of an unpredictable external stimulus, like a bird suddenly singing, it forcibly interrupts that internal loop.
Because it comes from outside.
Right. You have to cast your awareness outside of your skull and into the external environment to locate and process that sound.
Oh, that makes total sense.
It literally shifts brain activity away from the internal rumination of the DMN and engages the task-positive networks.
And furthermore, you cannot hear a bird singing tomorrow. And you cannot hear it yesterday. The auditory data anchors your consciousness entirely in the immediate split-second present.
And then the source material makes a really vital causal claim about all of this.
What's the claim?
It observes that practicing these micro moments, like the tea and the bird, gradually shifted her perspective, transforming joy into a, quote, source of strength to navigate her challenges with more ease.
A source of strength.
Yes, and the text is highly, highly precise with its language here. It does not claim the cup of tea magically generated the money to pay her bills,
Right.
or that the bird song somehow resolved her interpersonal conflicts. The joy did not fix the problem.
The joy provided the strength required to navigate the problem.
Exactly. Joy is the fuel, not the fix.
Joy is the fuel, not the fix. Here is where it gets really interesting for anyone listening. That distinction, that is what separates this entire philosophy from just simple escapism.
Escapism is running away. This is fueling up for the fight.
Right, because chronic stress is an incredibly expensive metabolic state.
That drains you.
Constantly running your threat detection systems. It depletes your cognitive reserves, your emotional reserves, everything.
You're redlining the engine.
Exactly. So by stringing together these micro moments, the client in the case study was not eliminating the source of her stress. She was actively replenishing her internal reserves.
She was putting fuel back into the system so the engine wouldn't just completely seize up under the continuous load.
Okay, so if a cup of tea and a singing bird can fundamentally alter the internal metabolic state of a human being navigating heavy stress, we really have to look at the measurable, real-world outcomes.
We need to see the ROI of joy.
The ROI, exactly. And the source material doesn't just leave it at the subjective experience of, feeling a little better.
No, the researcher makes 3 hard, scientifically testable claims.
Right. They say research shows that joy boosts resilience, strengthens relationships, and improves overall health.
Let's break down that first claim regarding resilience, because it redefines the concept entirely.
The host in the audio actually asks this specifically. They say, so joy isn't just about happiness, it's about resilience.
And the researcher immediately validates this. They say, exactly. Joy helps us recharge and reconnect with what matters.
Which flips how we usually think about resilience.
Completely. We often equate resilience with mere endurance, right? Just gritting your teeth, putting your head down, and taking the punishment.
We treat resilience like a concrete wall.
Right.
Like it just stands there and takes the impact of the storm until it eventually cracks and crumbles.
But true resilience requires active energy. It's more like an alternating current.
An alternating current.
Yeah, you expend energy fighting the friction of life, dealing with the stressors, and you have to actively pull energy back into the system to maintain the current.
Nice.
Joy is the charging mechanism. Without the micro moments of joy restoring those small increments of power, resilience eventually just collapses into total systemic burnout.
Okay, so joy is the charging cable for resilience. That covers the first claim. But what about the second claim? That joy strengthens relationships.
Well, that operates on the exact same mechanism of attention we've been talking about.
The attentional spotlight.
Right. Human beings have this evolutionary negativity bias in a relationship, especially when you're under the stress. We are just hardwired to notice the flaws, the slights, and the unmet expectations.
You walk into the kitchen and only see the dish they left out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you are actively practicing the cognitive action of joy, training your brain to scan for and savor small positive anomalies, you naturally apply that upgraded attentional spotlight to your partner.
You shift from a default state of waiting for them to inevitably annoy you to actively noticing the microscopic ways they're actually trying to help.
You stop waiting for the grand romantic gesture, right? The macro event.
Like the surprise vacation or the huge bouquet of flowers.
Right, and you start savoring the micro moment of them just remembering to run the dishwasher.
Or bringing you a glass of water.
Yes. And because you are practicing presence, you are actually in the room with them during a conversation, rather than a million miles away, mentally wrestling with your inbox.
So the attentional shift inherent in practicing joy actively rewires how you perceive the people around you.
It replaces resentment with positive reinforcement.
Which is huge. Okay, and that leads directly to the third claim regarding overall health.
Which we can actually extrapolate directly from the client anecdote.
The client who was suffering from overwhelming stress?
Right. Medically speaking, chronic stress triggers the HPA axis.
The hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal glands?
Yes, the HPA axis.
Yeah.
And that floods the body with cortisol and adrenaline.
Which is a disaster long term.
It is. It elevates your heart rate, it completely disrupts your sleep architecture, and it heavily suppresses your immune system.
It basically creates a massive allostatic load on the physical body. Like we said earlier, you are redlining the engine constantly.
But when a micro moment of joy interrupts that stress cycle, when the tea or the birdsong literally forces your shoulders to drop and your breathing to slow down, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system.
The rest and digest system.
Exactly. It serves as a biological brake pedal. Over time, consistently down-regulating the nervous system through these micro-interventions, it physically reduces the chronic wear and tear on your organs.
Which directly leads to improved health outcomes.
Exactly. It's not magic, it's biology.
Okay, so the philosophical framework is solid, the neurological mechanisms make sense, and the physical benefits are totally clear.
The ROI is there.
But, and this is a big but, a philosophy is completely useless if you can't actually implement it on a random Tuesday when everything is going wrong.
When the clouds are thick.
Right. And the source material thankfully recognizes this. It pivots into a segment literally titled Practical Potential.
Laying out a tactical guide.
Yes, it provides 4 specific daily joy practices that you can start today.
The first practice is the joy journal.
Which we hear about all the time, right?
Yeah, we do, but the instruction here is highly specific. Write down one joyful moment each day, no matter how small.
And the critical component here, and I really want to emphasize this, is the physical act of documentation.
Yeah, why the emphasis on physically writing it down?
Because people always ask, why can't I just think about the good thing that happened while I'm brushing my teeth before bed?
Why the pen and paper?
Well, because an internal thought is incredibly easily overwritten by a stressed brain.
Right, the negativity bias again.
Yes. Remembering the tiger kept our ancestors alive. Remembering the beautiful sunset did not.
So your brain prioritizes the tiger.
Your brain is a survival machine. It is not a happiness machine. At the end of a difficult day, your brain will synthesize all the data and confidently present the conclusion that the entire day was an unbroken, catastrophic disaster.
Everything was terrible.
Right. But the physical act of writing engages the motor cortex and externalizes the memory. You are literally creating a permanent, objective ledger of the sunlight.
You are manufacturing tangible evidence to present to your own stressed-out brain.
Exactly. When the brain says, everything is terrible and nothing good happened today, you have a physical piece of paper that proves the sunlight existed at, say, 2:15 p.m.
You can't argue with ink.
You really can't.
Okay, so practice number 2 is the savoring pause.
The savoring pause.
The text instructs, when something good happens, pause for 30 seconds and fully experience it.
And the duration here is not arbitrary.
Not all.
But why specifically 30 seconds? I mean, when my coffee tastes exceptionally good in the morning, I notice it for maybe 2 seconds before I open my laptop and start working.
2 seconds of joy, then back to the grind.
Right. Why do I need to sit there holding my mug for half a minute? It feels excessive.
It comes down to the mechanics of memory consolidation.
Okay, tell me more.
When a positive event occurs, the initial sensory processing is instantaneous. Right? You taste the coffee immediately. But for that positive experience to move from your short-term working memory into long-term structural change in the brain, it has to cross a synaptic threshold.
It takes time.
It takes time.
Yeah.
If you notice the good coffee for 2 seconds and then immediately open a stressful email, the forward momentum of your attention basically sweeps the positive data away before it can encode.
The stress hormone just instantly washes out the dopamine.
Exactly. Holding your attention on the positive stimulus for 30 seconds forces the brain to halt its forward momentum. It provides the necessary temporal window for the neurons to fire together long enough to actually wire together.
You are literally giving the neurochemistry time to saturate the system.
Yes, and physically alter the neural architecture, which prevents the joy from being immediately overridden by the very next minor inconvenience.
So you really have to hold the moment in your hands long enough for it to become a permanent part of your hardware.
You have to let it sink in.
Okay, moving to practice number 3. Share joy.
The text states, tell someone about a joyful moment. It multiplies when shared.
Which touches on the concept of physiological synchrony, right? And mirror neurons.
Yes, joy is inherently communal. When you vocalize a joyful experience to another person, you are forced to retrieve the memory, articulate the sensory details, and cognitively relive the event.
So you're basically hacking your own brain.
You are. This gives your own nervous system a secondary dose of the original neurochemical cascade.
You get to experience the exact same joy twice.
Just by talking about it. Furthermore, humans are highly susceptible to emotional contagion.
Emotional contagion.
Yeah. By sharing the micro moment, you are actively introducing positive emotional data into the recipient's environment. Their mirror neurons simulate the emotion you are describing, which provides them with a micro moment of joy they didn't even have to look for.
You are literally altering the emotional atmosphere of the room.
It's powerful.
It's like lighting someone else's candle with your own flame. Your flame doesn't diminish in size at all, but now there is twice as much light pushing back the darkness in the room.
That is a perfect way to look at it.
And that brings us to practice number 4, which concludes the tactical toolkit. Create joy rituals.
The source lists examples here, like a weekly walk, a gratitude toast at dinner, or a morning stretch.
And the operative instruction is to, quote, build small traditions.
Rituals function as psychological heuristics.
Heuristics meaning shortcuts.
Exactly. They reduce the cognitive load required to make decisions. Because if you are entirely reliant on just spontaneously noticing joy in a really chaotic environment, you will often fail because your attention is already depleted by stress.
You won't notice the bird if you're too busy panicking.
Right. But a ritual removes the variable of chance.
I see. A ritual is essentially building a designated runway for joy to land on.
A designated runway.
Yeah. If you just wander around hoping the sunlight breaks through the clouds, you are highly likely to miss it while you are, looking down at your phone.
Almost certainly.
But if you have a ritualized morning stretch or a scheduled weekly walk in the park, you aren't just hoping the sunlight appears. You are literally scheduling a mandatory appointment with it.
You are engineering predictability into your own environment.
Which the brain loves.
The brain craves it. In a life full of unpredictable stressors and shifting clouds, a ritual manufactures a guaranteed, reliable patch of sunlight. Your nervous system learns to anticipate this predictable dopamine delivery, and that inherently lowers your background anxiety.
So we have the joy journal, the 30-second savoring pause, sharing joy, and creating joy rituals.
Those are the mechanical gears of the practice.
Right. But as the source material draws to a close, the host of the Inner Horizon actually takes these tactical daily actions and uses them to redefine the entire overarching philosophy of the human experience.
The text gets incredibly profound right here at the end.
It really does. The closing note of the audio begins with this very stark contrast. They say, joy is not about perfection, it's about presence.
Presence over perfection.
Yes.
Yes.
Because the modern human condition is deeply, deeply infected by the pursuit of perfection.
Oh, we are completely obsessed with it. We are constantly sold the narrative that our current life is just like a rough draft.
A rough draft, exactly. We believe that if we just secure the perfect job or attain the perfect body, optimize our morning routine to the minute, and buy the perfect house,
then we will finally cross the finish line into a state of permanent happiness.
we treat our actual, current, messy life as a dress rehearsal for some flawless future that doesn't even exist.
And the pursuit of perfection forces your consciousness to permanently reside in the future.
You're always saying, I will allow myself to experience joy when these specific external conditions are met.
Which makes joy entirely contingent on a flawless environment, which, spoiler alert, never arrives.
Never. The text posits that joy is fundamentally about presence, and presence requires you to inhabit your current reality entirely.
The flaws, the stress, the clouds, and all.
The grounded reality of a present life acknowledges that, yes, the kitchen is a mess, the deadlines are looming at work, and the anxiety in my chest is palpable.
But the sun is shining through the window right now.
Right now, presence frees you from the absolute tyranny of waiting for perfection.
Which sets up what is arguably the most paradigm-shifting sentence in the entire piece of source material.
Oh, I know the one you mean.
The host says, joy reminds us that healing isn't just about overcoming, it's about living fully.
Healing isn't just about overcoming, it's about living fully. That sentence is a direct assault on the cultural narrative surrounding trauma, illness, and stress.
It totally flips the script.
Because the language we use to describe human struggle is almost exclusively the language of combat.
We fight disease.
We conquer our anxiety. We overcome our grief. We treat our own internal experiences as a literal battlefield.
We view the heavy things we carry as these obstacles blocking the path to our real life.
We tell ourselves, once I defeat this depression, once I overcome this massive financial crisis, then I can finally start living my life.
We put our capacity for joy in escrow.
Yes. Waiting to win the war before we allow ourselves to feel anything good.
But the source text argues that this obsession with overcoming is the very thing delaying the healing process.
Which is wild to think about.
Healing is not a finish line you cross. after you have eradicated all the stress in your life.
Mm.
Because the stress will always be there in some form.
Exactly.
Healing is found in the capacity to live fully, in the present moment, while the mess still exists.
Integrating the trauma, carrying the burden, and still retaining the capacity to savor a micro moment of joy.
That simultaneous duality is the healing.
You don't have to put down the incredibly heavy backpack before you are allowed to look up and notice the beautiful view.
You can do both?
You can carry the crushing weight and still extract the warmth from 30 seconds of sunlight.
That is the essence of what it means to be human.
It's fitting that the source material signs off by teasing the topic for their following episode, which is purpose, the deeper meaning that guides our journey.
And that progression from joy to purpose, it's actually biologically and psychologically necessary?
You can't skip straight to purpose.
No. You cannot engage with massive, abstract, existential concepts like your life purpose if your nervous system is trapped in a permanent state of threat detection.
If you're running from a tiger, you aren't pondering the meaning of life.
Exactly. Practicing micro moments of joy stabilizes the foundation. It provides the necessary metabolic fuel and the cognitive bandwidth.
Only after you have learned to anchor yourself in the present moment can you actually lift your head to look at the horizon and ask those larger questions about meaning. So what does this all mean for you listening right now? We've covered immense ground today, tearing apart a short but structurally massive concept.
We started by dismantling the illusion of joy as a passive weather event.
A lightning strike you just have to wait for.
Right, and we moved through the neurological reality of joy as an active, vital practice of resilience.
Fueled by the thermodynamics of a simple cup of tea, the external stimuli of a bird, and the memory encoding power of a 30-second pause.
The core takeaway here is that implementing this requires zero structural life changes.
Zero.
You do not need a massive overhaul to your existence today. You just need to notice one anomalous, positive data point. Just one good thing.
Just one. And you need to arrest your attention on it for 30 seconds. That is the entire initiation of the practice. That is exactly how the neural architecture begins to shift.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought to really mull over. And it's directly inspired by the text's insistence on presence and savoring.
Okay, let's hear.
If joy is fundamentally a cognitive practice that requires deep, uninterrupted presence in the current physical moment,
Right.
if it biologically requires you to hold a moment for 30 seconds to let the neurochemistry alter your brain, how is our modern attention economy affecting our baseline survival skills?
Oh, wow. That is a terrifying question.
Think about it. With the constant digital fragmentation of our focus, the endless barrage of notifications, the compulsive doom scrolling that yanks our attention away every 3 seconds.
We never hit the 30-second threshold.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible that our technology isn't just a distraction? Is it actively robbing us of our biological capacity for resilience? If we literally cannot sustain our attention for 30 consecutive seconds to savor a sunset or a cup of coffee,
How can we possibly expect to maintain the neurological joy muscle required to survive the storm?
it forces us to view the hijacking of our attention not just as a loss of productivity,
Right.
but as a critical threat to our emotional survival infrastructure.
It's definitely something to think about the next time you instinctively reach for your phone the very second things get quiet.
Just sit with the quiet instead.
Just for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the inner horizon.
It's been a great conversation.
It really has. We hope you go out and find and fiercely protect your 30 seconds of sunlight today. We will see you next time.